And we're live. It is Thursday, March 18th, and that means it's time for the really big class. We're an hour early today, which is unusual, but for a very good reason, which is that my guest, Tom Stone, has a COVID vaccine appointment later in the day. So we decided to just go an hour early, and I hope that those of you who are not able to catch it live will catch up at your leisure, and because it's going to be a great class. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Cecily.
So Tom and I have known each other since my very first day of conservatory at the Eastman School of Music, when he walked into my practice room and with a lot of confidence said, "You must be Cecily Ward." And I looked at him like, who is this strange guy walking into my practice room? I'm just trying to get ready for my first lesson. I don't know what's going on here. And as it turned out, someone had hinted to him that's who was in that room, and he should come say hi to me and actually befriend me, which was very much needed at the time. I was quite young and in a new place and needed a good friend. And as it turned out, Tom and I have been friends since that day. And in fact, we've played chamber music together. I was trying to figure it out. Tom, that would have been, I guess we played together for about 25 years. 25 years, almost every day.
Yeah.
And that's a really long time to sit next to someone. And I was also thinking about all of the millions of things that have just crept into my violin playing that comes straight from you. And
Really?
all the good stuff is what you're going to say. And I'm just really happy that you're here with us today and can share some of those things with our performers. We have no chamber music for you at all. So you are going to listen to a lot of solo Bach. It just turned out that way, and I thought that it was a nice coincidence that everyone had offered some Bach today. I know that you have a very, I'm not going to say unique. You have a Tom way of looking at Bach, and I think it's going to be different from what all three of these performers have heard before. And I think we should get to it pretty quickly. I'll just say Tom is in California. He is currently doing a number of things, which maybe I'd like to ask you about maybe a little bit later, sort of where your path has taken you since the quartet disbanded, because I think it's really interesting. But you're playing violin, you're playing viola, you're helping people find the violins of their dreams, you're guiding a chamber music series up in Eureka, you are dabbling in some video game development, and you've got a ton of interests. I know that you're cooking amazing food, and that might be the most important thing of all those things.
Definitely.
And all of those things go into your viewpoint on Bach, I think, in their own way. So let's get to it. Our first performer is Fionnghuala. She is one of my students at the Royal Northern. She's in her first year of undergraduate there. She has the Allemande and Sarabande from the D minor Partita, and we'll share her video now.
Great. That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Fionnghuala. I love the seriousness that you play with, and the phrasing, in voicings that you employ when you're playing. One thing that I also really enjoyed about it, and I'm not sure, I was looking down at the end because I was writing a note to myself, but when I watched the recording a few hours ago, I got it in advance. You had this adorable little smile at the end, and it was nice to see you like celebrate a job well done. So that was great. It's also, I think, really unusual, in a master class that, you did this, I don't know, a day, a week, a month ago, and here we are both watching the same performance. I remember when I was a student, like playing in master class, and then I'd get comments back, and it was hard to understand sometimes where they were coming from because my experience performing and the person who was giving the master class was so different, right? But now we both sort of get to watch it, and so I'm very curious what your impression is. Like,
Yeah.
how did you do?
Yeah, it's really strange watching it back. Like even listening to it, I thought, yeah, I'd do that differently next time because that was me a few days ago.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's a really good reaction. And aside from like that, there are different ways we can play, and we have different feelings in different moments. What are things that you're striving to do that you feel like are very challenging for you, and you'd like help with?
Um, Sometimes I do find the phrasing difficult. I've tried to find like a clear line, but sometimes
Hmm.
I find it hard to pinpoint exactly what I want to do with it.
Okay,
Hmm.
so that's good. And um, I guess one of the things that I noticed listening to you, I mean, I really enjoyed it, and uh, when it's really interesting to give a master class, about Bach, and to hear you. And, I feel like this is very much sort of a private conversation that's happening in public, and both on a teaching level and also on a musical level. I think there's something so private and personal about this music. And yet we have to play it in public. And, I think figuring out how to have intimacy, but how to project on a larger scale so it's more universal, I think is a real challenge with Bach. And when I think back on Bach, I think it has another challenge, which is the music's really mature, and I think most of us start to play it at a very young age. Um, and and there's something fraught for me personally about Bach because, like, I was playing it before I really had much of a relationship. Before it was a composer that really excited me, and I remember feeling like, oh, well, you have to play for auditions and juries and whatever as a college student, and before that for competitions, whatever you're doing, and and it's like often a requirement in this revered composer that everyone thinks is really important, and it's a little overwhelming. Like I found it like really overwhelming, especially when it was like much easier for me to feel like I had a connection to a composer like Beethoven or Shostakovich at a young age, and suddenly I have to play Bach, and it feels like very abstract and like something I can't emotionally connect to, and and it's interesting to teach it now and think back on that time of my own life, and that's sort of a similar place. I don't know where you're coming to the music from, but I think Bach has special challenges in that way. And I think one of the things that we can do to really help ourselves unlock those challenges are exploring questions, like asking ourselves questions. And I think that, I mean, that's a theme I think that I'd like to kind of talk about through this class is what are the questions that are going to help us, individually or collectively, unlock either problems or find meaning or figure out how to approach this music. And when I was listening to you there, and I often think of questions sort of in pairs. Like one of the things that was going through my head was like song or dance, right? Because there were moments rhythmically where you'd sort of like pop ahead and things would start really moving, and it would kind of, I don't mean this critically, but it would kind of run ahead a little bit. And I thought, oh, she's dancing right now. And then there were other times where it felt like, oh, she's feeling the music very lyrically here, and it would slow down, and it would become like the phrasing would become more sort of pronounced.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I was just observing, like going through, and that's not a criticism because both things are true. Like the music sings and it dances, right? And I would love for you to take a section, maybe play the very beginning again,
Hmm.
and just be conscious, like don't try to do something specific, but just think in your head as you're playing, Does this feel like something I want to dance or something I want to sing?
Okay.
Would you try like the first couple lines? Maybe
Mhm.
the first 10 bars or so? Fine. That's great. That's great. That's excellent. So I think I know which you were trying to do.
Yeah.
Whichever you were doing, would you do the opposite? Don't tell us, but do the opposite now.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so that was so different, those two ways. And
Mhm.
I don't want to judge, okay? But I think what I'm wanting to introduce is how can you ask yourself questions as you're practicing to explore different ways of approaching the music. And and you don't have to immediately judge like, is that better or the other one better? Like I'm not interested in that. Maybe they'll ultimately be synthesized because things aren't black and white. Everything isn't a song or a dance. But by focusing on different elements, you sort of can discover different sides of the prism of the music, and then you can figure out how much synthesis it benefits from or not. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yeah.
But it becomes a more intentional process that way,
Mhm.
and a more positive and constructive, as opposed to trying to figure out like how to not do things wrong,
Yeah.
right? So then the question can become like the second one. If I presume that was the dance, right? Am I Was the second version you just played a dance?
The second one. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you dance, you play faster, and it's
Yeah.
when you sing, you play slower. Not a bad thing, just different, right? So and it's very distinctive. Like I mean, the two approaches sound so different from you, right? So then the question is like, how can you make the dance version more compelling, or how can you synthesize the two, right? So I'd just be curious, like if you were practicing, if you were alone, and you asked yourself these questions, oh, what would it sound like as a song or a dance? Now you've played it sort of once each way. It would be great on your own to like explore each of those things in more depth, and
Mhm.
then see if you can synthesize them a little bit naturally in a
Yeah.
way that's sort of true to you. Would you mind trying that?
Yep.
We're kind of abridging here, but great. That's beautiful too. And so I guess what I'm wanting to do is try to introduce questions for you to find. You played the music with a voice. Like you have a musical personality. So I don't want to give you the impression that I don't think you do, because you absolutely do. But I'm wanting to give you questions to consider to make it more, I don't know, extreme or more pronounced.
Okay.
You know, for you to because it's one thing to have a personality, it's another to like explore it,
Yeah.
right, and make it more, extreme's a terrible word for it, but to make it more pronounced is maybe a better word, right? And so like I just encourage you when you're practicing that movement, um, to try different things. Like, what if it's a song and it's a sort of Allemande is it's a slow German dance, but like, what if it's a song but it has more speed to it, or it's not so dark?
Okay.
Like, what would that sound like if you tried to explore that side of it? Would you try that a little bit?
Yep.
Good, good. So, yeah. So that's what did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought that definitely sounded very different to how I played it originally.
Right, very different. And and something's also happening, which is that sort of you started with a kind of a really sprightly tempo, and then you sort of settled into something maybe a little more comfortable for you.
Mm.
Um, and that's fine. It might be interesting to try these exercises with metronomes at different tempos as
Mm.
well. Um, with the idea of not that the metronome is a sort of strict taskmaster, but it gives you freedom to, not kind of get behind, but be able to take rhythmic, liberties as you're
Yeah.
playing. If that, I don't know if you work with metronomes that way,
Yeah.
but you do. Okay, good.
Mm.
Yeah, so that would be really good. So I think that would be a really great approach to this movement in general. Is just experiment with lots of different things, but without judging. Like, hey, was that better? Was that worse? But just with the goal of like finding a specific thing that you want to try, and
Okay.
then finding something else, and then being open to the possibilities,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and the reason I'm suggesting that in part is because as I was listening to you perform, I felt like it was very serious, it was very musical, it was really good, um, but I want it to be more yours. So and I think this might be
Mhm.
a way to get there. Um, all right, can you play a little bit of
Yeah.
the next movement for me?
Yep. Anywhere in particular, or just from the start?
From the start. Good, good. That was beautiful too. And I just wanted to be reminded because it was a while since we heard the performance. Um, Now, with this, if you ask yourself the question again, song or dance?
Yeah, I feel like I don't have a really clear idea in my head of it, and I should.
Okay, and a Sarabanda is a dance, right? Just
Mhm.
intellectually, right? And with the sort of the emphasis is on the second beat, right? Which I'm hearing when you play. Um, could you try it again, like we did with the first movement, both ways, just
Mhm.
that first half? The other way. Good. So, would you tell us which was which? I think I know, but
The first time around, I thought of it more song-like, and then the second time, dance-like.
okay. And which feels more comfortable for you to play?
Um, I kind of liked elements in both.
Okay.
Um, Maybe song-like.
Okay. Interesting, because
Maybe.
my impression from the outside was you seem more comfortable playing dance-like.
Okay.
And, again, from the outside versus from the inside can be really misleading. But, I think you naturally really sing, but sometimes you get a little bit stuck. And so when you're thinking of the more dance-like approach, it still is vocal, but it feels more sort of stylistically compelling.
Okay.
A little bit, at least in those two versions. When you work on it on your own, sort of exploring each one in more depth, that may change and flip, and that's fine. And again, like obviously there are elements of both. It's a dance, most certainly, but it's a very slow, sad dance, right?
Yeah.
And it has elements of both,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's important that it maintains both. And I think the dance comes out less naturally than the song.
Yeah.
And when the dance comes out, sometimes the gets a little bit falls a little forward, like loses its sort of tethering, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think a metronome could be really helpful for that. And that's true with both movements.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some other questions that either you have or that you think asking could help you get to another place with this music?
Sometimes I feel like I'm playing the chords like by default. I'm just playing them because they're written down. I don't know exactly what to do with them.
Okay. Have there's a story, apparently Pablo Casals, when he would be starting a new piece. Do you know who he was? He was a cellist?
Yeah.
Okay. So apparently when he was starting a new piece, he would learn it on the piano first, and then he would play it on the cello. And I don't know if this is true, but I read that he'd spend like as much as a year studying something on the piano before he would play it on the cello. Do you know why he might have done that?
To get a more chordal feeling, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that's probably a big part of it. And he also apparently didn't want to have the technique of the cello influencing how the music sounded, right? So he wanted to have like a pure idea of how he wanted the music to sound and then work out the engineering on the cello so it came across that way. And so when I hear you say, I'm not sure about, the chords and what they mean and how they should feel, I think, wow, can you play the piano?
No.
No, okay. Because that would be a really interesting way to get at it,
Mm-hmm.
would be to play it on the piano. Another cool way would be to like listen to like a guitar recording of this music.
Yeah.
It can be really interesting to hear how they deal with arpeggiation and chords, because it's such a different sort of phenomena. But for right now, let's play some. So what if you play the chords like the downbeat and then the second beat is a half note, and then the downbeat and the second beat is a half note, and just play slowly through the chords.
From
basically leaving out second, eighth notes from the beginning.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Can you just say that once more? Sorry, I was looking at the wrong place.
So basically make dotted quarters half notes and leave out eighth notes. Or if you've got two eighth notes in a row, like in bar 3, just leave out the second eighth note.
Okay, yeah.
Chords. So leave out the resolution in effect.
Yeah.
That's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine. So have you ever done that before?
No, I actually haven't.
Okay, do you want to do it one more time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So without some of the resolution notes, it sounds pretty funky,
Yeah.
but and really dissonant. So what impression does that give you playing it that way?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting to hear without the, like, dare I say, distraction of the notes in between.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it sounds different to how I'm thinking of it in my head.
Uh-huh.
Like it really changed. I had to really think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think as much as you can, like when you're practicing, two questions that always go through my mind when I'm playing, are like, how do you play this, right? And most of us are really focused on like, how am I going to play this,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that's like the primary question. And sometimes what doesn't get as much attention is why am I playing it,
Yeah.
right? So like how and why, those two questions, like I wish they were always in our head at the same time instead of just one or the other,
Hmm.
because they exist as like they're married, how and why. Um, and if why comes before how, it can be really helpful. It depends on the passage, it depends on the person, right? But as long as they're together, I think we're in really good shape,
Hmm.
right? And so rewriting the music like you just did and playing just the chords, like you had the question, like, I'm not sure what the chords feel like. Well, if you rewrite it, then you can get a different insight into it, right? And that gives you a sense of, well, why, right? Like that gets to the question, like, why is it, what's this music saying to me,
Yeah.
right? Um, so if you add the other notes in, actually play it one more time with the other notes added back in, and think about, again, like you're not trying to do something. We're not about the how right now. We're about the why.
Hmm.
So add them back in and see what it suggests to you as you're playing.
Okay.
So you don't have to play well. Beautiful, beautiful. That seems so much more comfortable
Yeah.
to
It
you.
felt that at that time.
And what was going through your head?
Um, I just kept like hearing the other version of just the chords in my head,
Uh
and
huh.
I think I placed too much of an importance sometimes on the things that I don't find difficult. So I kind of just focused more on the chords there, and it felt like a smoother line.
Yeah, it was absolutely. That was my impression of it from the outside. Um, yeah, so I think as much as you can kind of rewrite things and ask yourself questions about like, why, what does the music say, and embrace your insecurity around like, when you ask me the question like, what what do the chords mean?
Hmm.
Um, just because you don't know doesn't mean you can't find the answer yourself,
Hmm.
right? And that's maybe more important than how you play it,
Okay.
because the more you can focus on those questions and sort of getting inside the music, the less you're going to, the more it's going to sort of teach you how to play. If that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes both things still take into, separate focus, but I think many of us are too focused on the how.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's absolutely fantastic advice. And it's kind of funny, Tom, you hit on almost precisely what Fionnghuala asked me in her last lesson, which was we were talking about repeats, and we were talking about how to decide what to do differently in repeats, and should we take repeats, and if you don't have anything different to say, maybe don't take the repeat. And it was just
Okay.
this topic about how to explore what you might do. And I think you just gave her about 6 ways, 8
Oh, good.
ways, endless ways to think
Yeah.
about that, um, and about the why versus the how.
Yeah.
Would be great if we never had to think about how.
I know, right? Well, no, it's okay. How is okay?
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Well, should we move
yeah,
on
let's
to
hear
the?
Kryštof.
Let's go to Kryštof and the B minor. We're gonna go ahead and play. I think, unless you want to stop between the movements, should we just listen through the Sarabande, its double, and the Borea and its double from the B minor partita?
You know, if it wouldn't be awful, could we do the Saraband and the double, and then and then talk, and then do the other two?
No problem. We'll do exactly that as long as
Cool.
Mark understood that's what we're gonna do. So, okay. So this is the Sarabande from the B minor partita. Totally different uh, can of worms here, and it's double.
That was beautiful, Kryštof. I really, really enjoyed that, and I enjoy how stylishly you play Bach. I enjoy the little ornaments you throw in. I think sound really they sound in the moment and alive. They don't sound sometimes it it can not be convincing to do ornaments, and I think you do them really beautifully. They sound really believable. There's a composer, kind of when I was listening to your performance, sometimes really stylish performances can get in the way of something feeling really authentic and real. Mm-hmm. And I don't get that impression, from your performance at all. It feels both. It feels both stylish and authentic. And there was a composer that Ceci and I both worked with, who once described, her job as a composer was to make music that sounded emotionally believable. Mm-hmm. And I love that sort of expression of, like what music needs to do. And I thought your performance absolutely did that. So how did you feel about it? What do you think?
Well, I was sort of, as you said, I was trying to be aware and sort of knowing the background of the piece, but also putting something a bit more innovative. So I was sort of looking for something between those two, and yeah, maybe sometimes it feels like it's too much of one or the other, but it's sort of the the question of juggling these elements together, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, the more elements you can kind of combine and synthesize in your performance, the better. And it should always feel like a little bit of a balancing act. I think that means it's working. I think it's really good. So there are a couple of thoughts I have about, in a way, more about. I mean, we can talk more about style, but I kind of like the path that you're on. I think I can help you a little bit with the how, perhaps, of some of it. And one of the things I noticed in the Sarabande is there were some chords that weren't well in tune. And I loved how you played the repeats, because you did two things on repeats. Like, one thing was you take a very different musical voice and approach, which I thought was really, really worked. It felt organic and not artificial. You also did some things with chord arpeggiation, like on the second ending in bar 8, where you use your arpeggiation to cover up the fact that your perfect intervals weren't in tune the first time. Mm-hmm. And so you corrected it the second time around, right? And so, which is smart. That's what you want to do, right? But it would be good to have it work both times. And what I was kind of noticing with the chords, talk to me about, like, how do you practice the chords so that they can be in tune? Because you play very beautifully in tune, right? So when something was out of tune, I didn't get the impression that, oh, he's not hearing it. I got the impression his fingers in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Right? Did you notice that at all?
Yes, I think so. Okay. Well, when I practiced it, I just kind of practiced in the double stops and just checking with open string when I can, and things like that. And also I try to think about the relation to the previous chord, like whether there's a note that should push a bit higher or settle a bit lower or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a good approach. I want to suggest a slightly different thing for you to try right now, which is, imagine that if a note is out of, well, can you play for maybe like bar 6, 7? Do you have numbers? I guess you can count to 6. So 6, 7 in the second ending. Can you play that much? Good. So I actually think this can be very simple. I don't think this is a complicated thing for you. And what I think it is about is your left elbow. So in other words, imagine that if a chord is out of tune, that the solution isn't adjusting your finger, but adjusting your elbow. Mm-hmm. Can you try playing that a little slower and just sort of tune the chords as you go from the elbow and see if that's helpful? Right. So, what position does your elbow need to be in for the F sharp, C sharp to be perfect, and the F sharp on the E string to feel like it's in the right place? Can you find that elbow spot?
Yeah.
Okay. Now go to the note before.
Mhm.
Good. So I actually think you need to choreograph a little. You've got, you. It seems like you have pretty long fingers, like longer than mine, certainly. And but I think that if you choreograph a little bit where your elbow needs to be and how it needs to get from place to place, from note to note, um, then I think that's really going to help that a lot.
Mhm.
Okay, and then intonation is just going to be about putting your elbow in the right place and not hand position so much,
Yeah.
because the hand position will be in the right place if your elbow's in the right place. Would you play from the beginning of the saraband to the second ending one more time, just slowly, and just sort of don't try to play well, just try to like explore that the elbow thing, and if you can tune from there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there on the second chord, it needs to be a little more sort of to the left for the upper two strings.
Mhm.
Yes. So figure out how to get from the first to the second. Well, that got to come to the left more for that. It's got to come to the left a little more for the that chord you just landed on.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
you're picking up really quickly. So then it's not so much a micromanagement thing of like, does my first finger need to be lower, or my third finger need to be
Mm.
higher? It's more, does my elbow need to be the left or the right? So
Yeah.
you're tuning from that, and depending on whether you're on the lower string or using a fourth finger, or upper string with the first finger needing to be back.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think if you go through slowly like that, being really methodical, it'll your right left hand will be less tense, reaching back and up for things, and you'll be able to play with it. There's more to do, but you'll be way more consistent, and
Mm.
it'll be easier.
Yeah.
And you can make it second nature.
Mhm.
So I think because I was struck by how beautifully you were playing and how musical and tuned so much stuff was, and then chords weren't.
Mm.
Okay, so I think that would be a good way to approach it.
Mhm.
Um, there was something else I noticed about. Sorry, I'm getting into a lot of the whys, not the hows, not the whys here, of playing. But there's uh, your violin was like a really great platform and not moving at times, and at other times your neck was freer.
Mhm.
And it seems like when your violin was in one piece with your neck and not moving, and then your body was moving, you didn't have good contact.
Mhm.
Sorry, that was really a complicated way to explain it. But when we watch the next video, let's work a little on the double. But I want to talk about that maybe with the Borea for the next video.
Mhm.
Um, with the double, one of the things I'd love for you to explore. Well, talk to me about the double. Like, what do you think the music is about, and what are you trying to kind of get at with it?
Well, I've been sort of thinking about it as a, well, obviously as a variation of the Sarabande, but almost a fantasy, or like something improvised, or something
Okay.
something that should be really free. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I sort of struggled with uh, not getting stuck within the phrases, and sort of with not being spontaneous enough, and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so if you have a improvisation or a fantasy or even a variation kind of form, like with this music, what are the things that you're trying to be spontaneous around, or what are the musical elements you're trying to vary specifically? I mean,
Mm,
to be specific.
I mean, well, bringing out the interesting notes, the interesting harmonies, uh,
Okay.
and maybe sort of perceiving it as chords and not as individual notes, but like sort having like a chordal structure that you sort of improvise about almost.
Okay. What if you tried to make the improvisation more around the rhythm,
Hmm.
either the rhythm or the dance,
Yeah.
so that you made more of things like hemiolas and the dance-like quality, and less of the sort of just intervallic
Hmm.
harmonic relationship? Would you mind trying that for us? Good. Good. Now try that again and try continuing to vary like what's happening rhythmically, like in the rhythm and in the dance,
Hmm.
in a different way than you just did. Just try again. Good. Good. I want you to try something else. Try a tempo like that. Okay. Now try a very slow tempo, but still dancing and feeling the sort of rhythmic hemiolas. Hemiolas. Good, good. So what I'm wanting to sort of help you do is like lead you through some experiments
Hmm.
of trying different things. And the idea is to sort of like practically try things
Yeah.
and see how they feel, again, with an open mind, not with, we spend so much time being judged, right? Like in a lesson or whatever. And we internalize that and we like judge ourselves.
Hmm.
But so much of practicing shouldn't be about like fortifying ourselves for like the wars that are coming.
Hmm.
Like practicing should be about like trying to explore different approaches so that we are able to do things in lots of different ways and sort of access our creativity while we're performing.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to like, building the armor to protect ourselves against like the slings and arrows of this world.
Yeah.
Which I'm telling you, it does. I don't think it works.
Hmm.
For some people it does, maybe. I don't know. But, but if that needs to be done, maybe it needs to be done a little bit later in the process.
Hmm.
Right? So, um, I'd love for you to do some more in sort of maybe, do you have measure numbers in your part?
No, I don't, but I can sort of.
Could you play from like, maybe from halfway through the second half, like from there? It's bar 21, or pick a place like halfway through the second half, because then it gets even more rhythmically kind of intricate.
Uh, uh,
Yeah, so things like um, I wonder if rather than slowing that way down, if um, if you if you could do the hemiola, but actually either in tempo or quick, as opposed to because when you stretch, would you mind trying that from like 2 bars before? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That works better. So I guess the thing is, like, I love your idea of this movement being, a fantasy and exploring the saraband in an improvisatory way. And then I think if when you're practicing, then you explore. Okay, now I'm going to improvise on the hemiolas. Now I'm going to improvise on the dance. Now I'm going to improvise on the sort of melodic relationship of the intervals. Now I'm going to improvise on sort of what I think is happening harmonically,
Mhm.
right? And if you sort of explore each of those a little bit individually, and then again you try to find a sort of synthesis that works for you, um, then I think I'm just sort of structuring kind of what you're doing so that it'll be more effective.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Okay. Um, yeah, and again, what I was missing was sort of the more rhythmic dance side of it, which we were getting at. Can we maybe, Mark, listen to the Sarabande now? Or sorry, the Borea in the double. That's great. That's great, Kryštof. Um, so did you pay? I mentioned you. I did. I should have said something right before, but to sort of notice the relationship of the instrument
Yeah.
when it's stable and when. And did you notice that there are times when you move your neck, and most of the time it's sort of locked in place?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Did you notice that? And what are your impressions, like you watching from the outside of that?
Mm. Well, I think I look more relaxed when I sort of um, when my head is sort of looser from the violin. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I I do think that sometimes I lose a bit of stability when I do that, but it's I I think it makes me feel more relaxed and it makes me look more relaxed too. So it's
Right.
yeah.
Right. What I noticed, first of all, it's I really enjoyed it. Okay, I mean that was a really enjoyable performance. So I'm starting like diving in to pick on you, um, but it's just wonderful in so many ways, like the variety and the repeats and just the dance quality of the Borea. It's really it's fun to listen to, really enjoyable. So I mean that's needs to be said because that's the most important thing. Um, but in terms of the violin thing, on one hand, I like how stable it is. On the other, when the violin and the neck are locked together as you're playing and you move, your bow is sort of losing contact.
Yeah.
So the contact in your bow isn't really great. And you're right. There's like a risk if you when you separate your neck, there's sort of a risk that the violin's not quite as stable. But when it's stable and it's moving, you're really not well off.
Mm.
Like that's I think it could have sounded much like better if you can kind of get at this in terms of the bow contact. And there's also something that's happening with the left arm. And so I was talking to you about tuning chords from the elbow, right? And I think if there's a way to kind of get released in here so that your elbow and your shoulder can be a little freer as you're playing positionally, I think it would be really good for your playing and for the violin actually.
Yeah.
So would you mind? I want to work on it with you, but would you mind just playing from the beginning of the beret? Good, good, good stuff. Um, that was already better. It was nice to see you sort of experimenting with it consciously. Play the very end, the little scale down under the slur. Ba, dee, da, da, dee, da. Play that again. Great. So you noticed in the recording the first time on the shift you missed it, and then the second time you sort of corrected it. And so I think it's good to be more intentional about like how that was way better with your neck off. It's sort of better, but you maybe need to squeeze the neck to get down to the G, da dee da da dee, just for that split second, right?
Mhm.
Do you want to try that slowly once and just sort of choreograph what has to happen in your body for the shift to be smooth?
Mhm.
So let me ask you this question. On that shift, what would happen if you actually, and this is really picky, but if you squeeze with your neck to hold the violin, but then you release your shoulder, right? That's a little what I'm talking about on this side, right? So that you go, hang on, grab my violin, sorry. Right here you squeeze, but this I'm releasing. My left side I'm releasing. So that this can move smoothly because this is released, but this is holding the violin.
Mhm.
Right. So for most of us, like myself included, when your neck gets tight, your shoulder gets tight.
Mhm.
Like they're related, right? So what I'm wanting to sort of introduce to you is like, well, can we separate those two things?
Mm.
Can this and the elbow in a way, we're talking about tuning the chords from this elbow. I'm like, I just discovered the elbow in the last 10 years. And I just think the elbows are like the key to everything in violin playing.
Mm.
But one of the things the elbow can do is release your shoulder.
Mhm.
Right? Like move your elbow, what happens to your shoulder? Right? In any direction. Right? The elbow is going to release your shoulder.
Mhm.
So if you imagine that, and if you tighten your shoulder, you can't move your elbow. Try it once. Try tightening your shoulder and try moving your elbow.
Yeah.
You can't,
Mm.
right? The elbow moves from the shoulder, right? So I want you to try that one more time, and just think about your how your shoulder is releasing your elbow to do the shift, and you can tighten your neck, and your shoulder can still do that. Yeah, yeah. But one thing, your elbow is not only moving; it's not only moving down; it's moving down into the left, so that when you land on the G, your hand position is good for the first position. Try that one time. Yes. Does that seem? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does. Just yeah.
Yeah. Good. Good. And sorry. So can you play back from the opening one more time with the chords? Just and yeah. I don't have any instruction. I just want you to keep experimenting with this.
Mhm.
Good. 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 So if we were in the same room, I would hold your scroll. And because I don't want you to move, I love your motion. It's very musical, but I wish the violin was a little bit more in one spot and everything else was moving around it.
Mhm.
Would you try the same thing one more time, trying imagining that you can be really free and you can move your arms a lot, but the violin's staying more in one place and everything's moving around the violin?
Mhm.
Good, that was awesome. Now I want you to try something. Give yourself permission this time that the violin can move left and right, but not up and down. Same thing. You want to move down there. You want to move down there. Don't let yourself move down. You can go left and right. You can't go up and down.
Mm.
Try it one more time. That was awesome. That was really, really good. So I want you to add one more thing to that. And this is just silly, but I hope it's not too embarrassing. Do the same thing and imagine right now, like do you know what a bobblehead is? like in a car, those little things that sit on the dashboard and the heads go
Oh
like this.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I want you to actually do the same thing, and you can be free. You can move right and left. You can't, no down. Down's not allowed. But I want you to like be a little bit of a bobblehead the whole time. So like have your head moving, like like this the whole time you play. Just not a lot, just gently moving as you play. Okay, try it once. I'm just curious what it'll do. Cool, cool. I that's a really good way for you to practice. I don't know how it feels, but it feels like you. Are we almost done, Seth? Um, does that feel more free?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's
Yes. Because it's about like you want to have freedom and command,
yeah.
right? Not one or the other. You want both,
Hmm.
right? You want to be able to, and that sounds really good.
Mhm.
That sounds really really good. And we have to stop, but Cecily, give me 1 minute. Would you play just a tiny bit of the double for us? And I want you to sort of same thing,
Mhm.
same thing with just like feeling, yeah. Good, good, good. So I would explore that, and if you want to get more guts into your sound, like for a deep voice,
Mm.
remember what we talked about of the right and the left of the left elbow?
Yeah.
On the right side, I would think about getting your elbow up a little higher in advance and then just releasing the whole arm weight. If the elbow's here, you have the weight of your hand.
Mm.
If the elbow's here, you have the weight of your arm.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Mhm.
This gives me the weight of my hand. This gives me the weight. And if the elbow is sort of more or less equal with the shoulder, I get the upper arm too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Can you feel that? So when you get la da dee da dum, ya da dee, if you can go from here to here, then you can get the whole arm naturally going into the instrument, and you can get a deeper sound.
Mhm.
So I would experiment again with both elbows. This elbow to tune your chords, right? And then this elbow to be able to regulate how much weight you're using from which parts of your arm.
Mhm.
And it's a more relaxed way of playing.
Yeah.
Then, because if it's a little lower and you've got to put in weight, you're pressing, or you just use less weight,
Mhm.
right? But the violin wants the weight. Like if you imagine the sound being deep, the violin will love it. It'll accommodate you, right? But you have to get it from the right place.
Yeah.
That makes sense? So another thing for you to experiment with.
Okay.
A pleasure to hear you. You're
Thank you so
wonderful.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bravo, Kryštof. It was really just a delight to hear every note you played. And I really hope you watch back. You can go to YouTube and watch this back, because the difference between the 3 times that you played with the first with the I forgot the order which Tom had you do things, but each time it got a little bit more, I think, true to probably what you want. So do take a listen back, and just really beautiful playing. I have a question for you, because you sent me a long list of repertoire that you have up right now. Are you preparing for something?
Well, not really. I just kind of took it as my lockdown project to make a lot of recordings and things. So I sort of about that.
Oh, very well done. I can't wait to hear you play in person sometime very soon. So thanks for contacting me and playing.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to leave the partitas behind and move on to the first movement of the C major sonata. We have Emma playing this amazing movement. And I think we'll just go straight to that. Thanks, Tom.
Sure. Emma, that was beautiful. Okay, hang on, I need to pin you. Okay, yeah, that was really beautiful. I enjoyed it very much. Listening to it, and I want to hear what your impression is. But for me, it I get the sense that you're really swept up in the music, and that it's very authentic and real for you, and it's very moving to listen to. So thank you for that. And what's your impression watching it from the outside?
Um, well, I did this recording a few weeks ago for like also like a Zoom recital thing, which is also the new thing now. But obviously for me, the biggest thing is that I know what the harmony, like what all of the harmonies mean to me. And I think that I'm portraying them in the moment, but then as soon as I watch the recording back, it doesn't actually come out, as much as I think it does. So,
Okay.
yeah,
And why do you think that is?
um, I don't know. I get really like if I start focusing on other things, I'm not sure about the flow because it's always this moment for me. It's always about how it flows, right? Because it's very difficult to. I find it really difficult to not play it. I don't want it to be bitsy. I want it to still
Right.
like a big idea.
Okay, but if you have like a really specific idea of like what the harmonies mean to you, and then you listen and that doesn't quite come out,
Mm.
I wonder if maybe that's not a. Do you think that's a matter of interpretation or mechanics?
Probably mechanics.
Probably mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably mechanics.
Mhm.
It's probably that you're imagining something in your head,
Mhm.
and then what's coming out is pale in comparison, right? Because there are things to do with the how of playing the violin that maybe are interfering. Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, that's probably a good place to start at least.
Mhm.
Um, and did you notice anything like mechanically as you were watching where you're like, "Oh, I wish I didn't do that," or this felt differently, or
Mechanically,
yeah,
um, yeah, my right arm, my right
okay,
arm tends to be a little bit jerky. Also, my left arm is also sometimes very jerky. Um,
okay.
it's definitely a work in progress.
Well, we all are, so get used to it. Um, no, I noticed something specific in your right arm in particular, and what I noticed was when you do chords from up bow to down bow, your neck
Yeah.
stays relaxed, and your arm lifts, and you do the chord with a deep sound on the G string. And when you do chords, and this is again, it's not particular to you. A lot of us have the same issue. From an up bow to a down bow, your neck tightens up and you don't really raise your arm and it goes and so you don't get leverage over the G string.
Okay, up bows, yeah.
Yeah, from down bow to up bow. So I would love to try go ahead and play from the beginning. And I
Mhm.
just want you to see if you can notice what's happening in your neck when you're changing bows down to up and then up to down.
Okay.
Just like observe, don't try to, play particularly well. Yeah, great. So that was already very different. Did you notice?
Totally. It was like the
And
first up one I noticed, yeah.
yeah, and then if you notice in bar five,
Mhm.
the second beat, do you have numbers?
Yeah.
The second beat is a very tense chord. It's like really somewhat climactic, and it's a disappointment compared to the first beat because you actually really but the you actually have to give yourself a second, like release everything, get way over there and but to really get into that G string on that up bow.
Okay.
Can you try just on that bar slowly? Wow. Wait. Play play the first chord, but then give yourself a second and bring yourself all the way as far over as you need to be, and then wait for a second, and then feel the weight, and then play the up bow chord. No, no. Can you get it higher?
Like
Can you
this?
get it higher? Yeah, a little bit, just so you feel heavier bow.
Mhm.
Yeah, try it again.
What, sorry?
Try it one more time. That's the idea. So what happens normally is your neck is just seizing up there, right? And your arm is going as little as it possibly can get away with, rather than as much as it demands.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, yeah. And also here, right? So your shoulder can function in two ways. The way you're playing, you're raising your shoulder from the back, right? It can go up from the shoulder blade, right? But it can also act as a fulcrum for your elbow. Do you know what a fulcrum is? Like a pulley. So in other words, it can stay where it is, and instead of raising like this to get up higher, which freezes the weight, it can act as a hinge for the elbow to bring the weight of the arm up. Do you want to can you feel the difference between this and then bringing your elbow up? And then when the elbow goes up, the shoulder should sort of go down.
Yeah.
Do you feel that? So when you go ba-dee-dum, for this, if you can relax your neck so that the shoulder can drop down and the elbow can come up, then you can get the whole weight of your arm over the G string for the elbow. Does that make sense? And when I was watching your video, that's what I was noticing was when you're going from the down to up, you're going.
Yeah, okay.
And you don't get weight. You're actually holding. This suspends your arm, so you're actually not getting the weight of your arm. So do you mind playing just from the beginning one more time, and just focusing in on that and seeing, just see what it, just zoom in on that in your mind's eye, and see if you can experiment with it a little bit. I'm going to stop you. Really, really good. And there's how does that feel to you?
Sounds
It's
different.
interesting, right? Yeah, it sounds very different. Now, I want you to add another sort of step to it, which is when you go to the lower string or the lower place or the up bow, I want you to give yourself a moment before you play, because I feel like you're starting the note before your arm's in position to play it. And I'll give you an example. So this, like you're going, so the sound on the B flat is a little bit unfulfilling because you're not, I don't know if it was it down to up? Did you play that on an up bow? The B flat? Or
Down.
Down. To give yourself the time to get all the way there and have your arm in position, feel the weight, and then let the weight release into the string. Same here. Does that make sense? So in a way, another way of thinking of it, sometimes people describe it, is like imagine that you're playing the string from the left side of the string.
I hear that a lot.
You do? Well, it's a different way of, it's about getting your arm over that part. Would you mind playing from just the end of that phrase, like bar 10, if you?
I don't know if it's a.
That's fine.
think it's I don't know.
Yeah, but there too. I think you want to. Where do you want your arm to be when you hit that G?
Already before to the
Maybe in a different spot. By the way, that was beautiful. I don't know if you could hear it from your. I mean, even through the computer, it's such a deep, dark, beautiful sound. But here, so you can,
yeah.
you know, and again, it's still your choice about how much of that weight you want to use, right? Like how much you want to release into the string. But it's never a bad idea to have it available,
Yeah.
like because you're in a better position of balance and control and command than if you're there versus if you're here, right? If you're a little bit to the right.
Right.
Yeah. Can you play that cadence again? Just a couple bars before the G octave. Yeah, no. No, you're doing so well in that chord. You didn't. The chord with the A, um, on the A on the upper, you went
Yeah.
to start just right on the G's. Beautiful. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. One of the things that was changing for me was that there were a lot more different shades of color in the chords than before, than what I was hearing before.
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic. I still think you can challenge yourself to do more. And kind of, I think the idea, it was really good. It was really, good. And then there were places like, uh, uh, that because you can catch a chord like that. I can. Sorry, it sounds terrible, but I can catch the chord. I can catch it like that, but it's so much more satisfying, I think, to get it from there. Then the weight is as deep on the G string as it is on the rest, and then the G string sounds deep.
Yeah.
If the G string, if you rob it of its full weight, the G string sounds like the D string. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would just, as you're experimenting with this on your own, I would ask yourself, like, how far can I go? How far can I go to the left? And the beautiful thing about it is, like, there are moments when moments that I'm feeling good about playing, that it feels like when I go to that up bow, that almost like my elbow is like there's like a hot air balloon, and it's just like floats up with great ease. And that's different than this motion,
Yeah.
which is a lot of, that actually is a lot of work, versus like feeling like the elbow's floating up. And then, so it floats in this direction, and then I can feel the weight in this direction. And I would even try it without the violin again. If you just hold the violin in your left hand and you feel your right arm, like feel the elbow, bring your right, the weight so that you can feel your upper arm, so that it floats up, and then you feel weight coming down. Do you feel that? Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to help you get at. Yeah. And, and again, if you take the moment, there's a moment of release, which is exactly the opposite of what you're doing. So at the end of a down bow, there's this like release moment where it's like the weight holds it down, and then it just releases up. Does that make sense? And that in that release, the neck opens up and the arm floats up, and then you get to use that weight.
Yeah.
So almost after every down bow, there's like this little release that can happen, when you need to change strings or whatever. Yeah. I would love you to try just a little of that again, to try this, and then I'll let you go. But maybe do you have numbers? I forgot. Yeah. You do? So somewhere like around 34?
Yep. Okay.
That was awesome. That was awesome. And I especially loved bar 39.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think it was that downbeat. I mean, you really, it was a little messy because it was so extreme, but it was absolutely the right idea. If you did it two more times, it would sound incredible. And there were things that, like, your playing sounds much more colorful to me that way.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, just the color of the sound. So like when you hit that major bar 45, that C major chord there,
Mm-hmm.
it sounded so much different. It was like, it sounded so much more different than what you were doing before to my ear. So it's beautiful, really great. So I hope that's helpful.
No, very. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I think of you as like a musical niece because is a very close and old dear friend of.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm gonna take the stuff that you've said and put it to good use. It feels good. I just need
Good.
to.
Good.
Thank you so much, Tom.
You're welcome.
I love your description of the hot air balloon. I've been trying to put that feeling into words so often of like when somehow your arm floats up and does just the right thing at just the right time, and it feels like there's no effort in it. Like you're not pushing it up or pulling it up. It's just sort of floating. It's a nice feeling when it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, that was a
Well,
beautiful end to our few hours with Bach today. Thank you, Emma, for that. Now I want to hear the fugue because you can't stop there. But that'll have to be another day. She says no, thank you. Let's see if we have any questions. I have something, but if we want to see if anyone who's in our Zoom call has a question. Doesn't look like anyone is feeling like talking. I don't see any hands. We're not going to get any questions today? All right, well, I will ask one. Tom, I mentioned at the beginning that I wanted to come back to this thought about like what you've done since our time together in the Cyprus. And there's a reason I want to ask you about this because I've been getting a lot of questions lately from wonderful violinists who are finishing up their graduate degrees or postgraduate degrees and looking ahead and saying, oh, maybe I don't really want to go into music. I don't know if I want to go into music. Here I have these, 8 years of degrees behind me. Was it a waste? And I know the advice that I've given, but I wonder if you have any thoughts on what, a serious study of music may or may not lead to. And I know you'll just talk if I push play. So there we go.
Well, Cecily, back when we were playing in the quartet and we were traveling around, and giving concerts and master classes, I remember like people constantly would come up to us backstage. And I don't know if everyone got as many questions as I did, but, I was asked constantly, is so-and-so who's playing in my master class, like, are they, can they have a career in music? Does my child play well enough? Or, what does it look like? And I remember thinking, ironically, that at the time, I think the Philadelphia Orchestra was having huge financial problems, and other orchestras. Right now, obviously the Met's not being paid, but I'm thinking back a decade or more, and I remember thinking to myself, like I know people who are incredible musicians who landed in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and they might not be musicians for much longer, and who am I to say whether someone should pursue music or not? Because this profession, and this is not only true of music, but many other professions, is sort of what you make of it. And, for people who are entrepreneurial, I think there are ways to find and create opportunities for yourselves. And for people who are more comfortable, following a prescribed path, I think there are ways to have success in music as well. I don't think there's only one way. But another friend said to me, when our quartet was retiring and I was thinking about what to do next, and I had really no idea what I would do next, the friend said, well, what else is worth your time? What else makes any sense in this world to do? And I thought about, people I know who get degrees in psychology and go work at Google and try to figure out how to manipulate young children into spending more time online, or, I also know someone who had a psychology degree, who was like worked at McDonald's, and it's like in child psychology. There are all kinds of ways to make money and to have a good life. But the nice thing about music is, you're in most cases doing no harm. And in a lot of cases, you're doing a lot of good. And so I think that at times when there's very little opportunity, um, music is especially needed, right? And I think this pandemic has put into really stark relief how much we need human contact and interaction, and how few healthy ways there are to have it. And the arts and music in particular is, one of very few ways that we can interact with each other in a way that's really like positive and stimulating and healthy. And so, I don't think the world needs less of that. I think the world certainly needs more of it. And, and I know that in a country like England or in Germany, the path to having a sustainable life is different than in a place like America. I think every place has its quirks and idiosyncrasies and ways that work better and ways that work worse. But, I think the universal truth is that, we need to have contact and connection with each other. And there's absolutely no better way than music. And, and I think on a more personal level, I don't think there's anything, in terms of self-fulfillment and improvement, music is like the greatest religion, in offering all kinds of possibilities and paths to become a deeper, better, more fulfilled and interesting human being, and have something really to share with other people. And so I don't think it's ever a waste to immerse yourself in music, to study it, to try to play an instrument or be a conductor, and do it really, really well to the best of your ability. That's never a waste, even if 5 years later you go to law school and you end up doing something else. And I also think there's no better preparation for most careers than doing your best in music. Right. So, if it's fraught, and if you can't, the pressure is overwhelming, if it feels hopeless and makes you depressed, obviously, like, you want to change and do something different, right? But if you can find a way to do it that's really fulfilling and engaging, and combines all the different parts of your brain that we all have, whether it's executive or associative or creative or analytical, all of those things are needed to have a successful career in music. And, the more they're all engaged and not one at the expense of another, the healthier I think we are and the more successful we can become. So, and I also think change is not something to be afraid of, right? If, I think for people who really immerse themselves and throw themselves in and do their best at music and then go on to do something else, that's not a loss. That's
right.
That's a gain.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that answers
you. Oh, Emma's got a question. Yeah, Emma, go ahead.
I just have a question directly for you, Tom. I wanted to know what you're up to now. I mean, are you teaching? I'm asking as your musical niece.
Okay. Am I teaching? So right now I'm doing kind of a mix of different things, and I have a kind of eclectic life right at the moment. So first of all, I have a younger daughter who is going to college next year, and I've been kind of waiting for her to leave to kind of figure out what's the next chapter of my life. But I'm doing a little bit of teaching, but not very much. I'm performing on violin and viola, like a moderate amount. So next month I'm subbing with a string quartet where someone's pregnant, and I'm making a recording and doing 2 concerts with them. So I'm doing that. I'm also doing a recording next month on viola, which is like the first time that I'm recording on viola with a string trio of 2 incredible players, and I'm going to just try not to make a fool of myself. It's my goal. A contemporary trio by a composer who's a dear friend of mine. So I'm doing some performing. I'm actually doing consulting in the rare instrument field. So I'm helping musicians find instruments, and also I'm helping people buy and sell things. It's a lot of people find the market unsavory and difficult, and I don't mind it. Like, I don't mind navigating it. I'm pretty comfortable with it. So I help people with that. I also am working as an executive at a video game incubator and startup company, which doesn't take up. It's not a lot of time, but I'm doing work in that as well. And then Cecily mentioned, I just took over the artistic directorship of a chamber music series in Northern California. And the chamber music series is on ice right now. During COVID, there haven't been any performances, but the founder stepped down not long ago, and I came in about, I don't know, 6 months ago, and I'm planning the relaunch of the series in September, so that'll be our first season, and that I'm really enjoying. It's really exciting to do that.
Wow, fantastic. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
All right. And we have one question in chat, and then I think we need to wrap up. So Laura asks if there's anything, any advice for someone really wanting to go into a chamber music career. And
Do it. You do it. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of. I mean, I think the world needs more chamber music, not less. And I think if I had to simplify kind of, I guess, my best idea or advice, it's that, like if you're really passionate and you love chamber music, find the intersection of that passion and what society needs. Like you don't want to just play for yourself. Like like playing for yourself and really being fulfilled by your own performances is really important, and it's something to strive for. It rarely happens, but it's you have to strive for that. But finding the intersection between that and what society needs, how music, your vision of how music could benefit society, whether it's a small community or something grander, like finding that intersection is really, really important. And then you have to live in that intersection and really work hard to bring your passion for chamber music together with, really being an evangelist for some community or other to present it in a way that where people say to themselves, "Wow, I never realized how much I needed this until you brought it to us." So that's sort of my most general advice.
Amazing. Any other? Laura says thank you. She was cooking and she didn't want to miss whatever it was she was doing, which I think you would approve of. That's it for today. I have a few announcements before we end the live stream. Sarah Hauschka is on here, Tom. I don't know if you noticed.
I saw that. Hi, Sarah.
And she's saying thank you. So we have one more class in this lockdown series, and it's next week, and I'm going to teach. I'm going to selfishly take the last class. We have music of, I'm looking at my sheet, Mendelssohn and Saint-Saëns and Isai next week. So that'll be the last of this sort of series that we've started in January of weekly violin classes. In April, that takes us to a year. That takes us to like the last class will take us to a year of the really big class. And I considered stopping there, but no, we're not going to stop. So in April, I'm planning 2 chamber music classes. The 15th and 22nd, we'll have some string quartets. And then May, I have something really special to tell you about. When Tom and I played in the Cypress String Quartet, we had the great privilege of working with many, many living composers. We commissioned, I don't even know how many pieces, and premiered many pieces. And it was really an incredible experience, both in terms of learning the new music and getting to know composers, but also in terms of what that did for our performances of older works. So that's one thing we haven't had any of in the really big class is brand new music. So in May, I am featuring 4 composers, and I'm bringing 4 violinists. One of them will be me. Fenella Humphreys will be joining us. Elizabeth Kufaroth will be joining us, and Michelle Lee from the Tesla Quartet. And each week we will bring a guest composer and explore a work that was either written for one of us or that we are currently working on with the composer. We'll have a performance of a contemporary piece of music, perhaps by the same composer, maybe not, maybe by someone else, and something older as well that we'll get commentary on from both the violinist and the composer's point of view. This will be New Music Month in May. I'm absolutely thrilled. The composers who have said yes are world class, so you can look for information about that. If you are interested in playing, please let me know. And same goes for the string quartets in April. If you have, it doesn't have to be a quartet. If you have a duo, trio, quartet, quintet, that might be pushing it. Get in touch and we'll get you on the series.